My name is Anna Preston. I'm 31 years old, and I'm a nurse practitioner in cardiac care. On November 15th, my 78-year-old grandfather survived emergency triple bypass surgery. 16 hours later, he was still sedated in ICU when my mother looked at him and said, "He's not worth canceling the trip. Tyler earned this vacation." My brother Tyler, golden child, pharmaceutical sales rep, President's Club winner, just nodded. Then he looked at me and said, "You work here anyway. You've got this." They didn't ask me to stay. They informed me. Then the three of them flew to Hawaii while I sat beside my grandfather's ICU bed, listening to the ventilator hiss and watching blood seep slowly into fresh gauze. What they didn't know was that 8 months earlier, my grandfather had made me his healthcare power of attorney. They didn't know he'd hired a private investigator, and they had no idea what the attorney who walked into room 4218 7 days later was about to place in my hands. What happened next didn't just destroy my family. It exposed who they'd been all along. If you've ever wondered how far family would go when money's involved, stay with me. And if this story resonates, hit subscribe. I want to know I'm not alone in this. The first night alone was the longest. Room 4-218, ICU 4th floor. Providence Heart and Vascular Institute. The overhead lights dimmed at 9 p.m., but the monitors never stopped their rhythmic beeping. Every 2 hours, an alarm would sound. Every 2 hours, a nurse would come in to check vitals, adjust the IV drip, reposition the chest tube drainage bag. Every 2 hours, I would jolt awake from the visitor chair that folded out into what the hospital generously called a bed. Blue vinyl, metal frame. It reclined maybe 30 degrees if you were lucky. I kept replaying it in my head, over and over. "He's not worth canceling the trip." My mother had said those exact words that morning at 10 a.m. She'd been standing right there at the foot of his bed. My grandfather was sedated, eyes closed, the ventilator breathing for him with that mechanical hiss-click rhythm that becomes white noise after a while. She looked directly at his face when she said it, right at him, like he was a piece of furniture blocking a doorway. An inconvenience. The thing about conscious sedation, and I knew this because I'm a nurse practitioner, I'd been working in cardiac care for 7 years, is that it's not the same as being unconscious. Patients on propofol at the dosage my grandfather was getting, 25 micrograms per kilogram per minute, they can't move, they can't speak. Their eyes stay closed, but their brain activity continues. Sometimes they can hear everything around them, sometimes they remember it later. I wondered if he'd heard her. I wondered if he'd heard Tyler agree with her. I wondered if he knew they'd all left. At 11:30 that night, I couldn't sleep. The chair was uncomfortable, sure, but that wasn't why. My phone was at 14% battery. I'd forgotten my charger at home in the rush to get to the hospital when they'd called about the surgery complications. I checked Instagram out of habit. Notification, Tyler's story. Tyler's. I clicked it. Sunset photo from Waikiki Beach, golden hour lighting, palm trees silhouetted against orange and pink sky. A Mai Tai with a little paper umbrella sitting on a wooden railing. Tyler's face in the corner of the frame, sunburned and grinning, wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses. The caption read, "Earned this hashtag President's Club, hashtag Aloha Vibes, hashtag Work Hard, Play Hard." Posted 6 hours ago, while I was sitting here watching my grandfather's oxygen saturation hover at 93%. I looked up from my phone and through the glass window into the ICU room. My grandfather lay completely motionless under white hospital sheets. The ventilator hissed and clicked. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily, 82 beats per minute. Blood-tinged fluid dripped slowly from the chest tube into the collection chamber hanging at the side of the bed. The incision down the center of his chest was covered in gauze, but I could see the edges already starting to show signs of inflammation, redness, slight swelling. Earned it. My phone buzzed in my hand. 2:52 in the morning my time. 11:52 p.m. in Hawaii. Text from Mom. How is he? Enjoy your time together. We'll be back Tuesday. Tyler needed this break. Work has been so stressful. Love you. I stared at that heart emoji for a long time, the little red symbol at the end of a message about abandoning her father in an ICU bed. I typed back with shaking thumbs. He's stable. I didn't add anything else. Didn't say he had a fever spike at midnight. Didn't say his blood pressure dropped to 90/60 and the nurses had to push fluids. Didn't say, I've been sleeping in a chair for 2 days while you're drinking cocktails on a beach. Just, he's stable. I hit send and put my phone face down on the windowsill. At 2:30 in the morning, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway outside. The door opened quietly. Susan Reeves, the ICU charge nurse, poked her head in. I'd worked with Susan 4 years ago when I was doing my clinical rotations as a nursing student. She was in her 50s, kind eyes, always wore her stethoscope draped around her neck like a scarf. She was carrying a heated blanket from the warmer. Your family really left? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, so as not to disturb the other patients in nearby rooms. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice right then. She didn't say anything else, didn't offer platitudes or try to make excuses for them, just set the warm blanket on the arm of my chair and gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. Then she closed the door softly behind her. Small kindnesses. That's what gets you through nights like that. I wrapped the blanket around my shoulders. It was still warm, that institutional laundry and bleach smell that's somehow comforting in hospitals, and looked back through the window at my grandfather. His hand twitched slightly. Just a small movement, fingers curling and uncurling, probably a muscle spasm from the sedation medications. The propofol can cause involuntary muscle movements sometimes. But for just a moment, I wondered. I wondered if he'd heard Susan's question, wondered if he'd heard me not answer, wondered if somewhere in that sedated state, he knew I was there. The monitor above his bed showed his heart rate, 82 beats per minute. Steady, regular. The waveform marching across the screen in green peaks and valleys. I wondered how much he understood about what was happening. I wondered if he knew what they'd done. He woke up on the second day, November 17th, 10:22 in the morning. I was standing at the head of his bed when the respiratory therapist came in with Dr. Raymond Cole, the hospitalist who'd been managing his post-operative care. They were going to extubate him, remove the breathing tube from his throat. The surgery had been successful enough that his lungs were strong enough to breathe on their own now. I watched as they carefully removed the tape securing the endotracheal tube to his face. The respiratory therapist counted down, 3, 2, 1, and then smoothly pulled the tube out in one motion. My grandfather coughed immediately, a deep rattling cough that made his whole body shake. But then he took a breath on his own, and another, and another. The respiratory therapist placed a nasal cannula on him, 2 liters of oxygen per minute, and stepped back. Dr. Cole listened to his lungs with a stethoscope, nodded, made a note in the chart. My grandfather's eyes fluttered open, squinted against the fluorescent lights. His hand moved weakly toward his throat. His first word was barely audible, hoarse and rough from the tube irritation. Water. I grabbed the styrofoam cup of ice chips the nurse had left on the bedside table, took the little plastic spoon and held it to his lips. He let the ice melt on his tongue, then swallowed carefully, winced. His throat was raw. How long? He asked after a few more ice chips. His voice sounded like gravel. 2 days since surgery, I said, keeping my own voice steady and professional even though I wanted to cry with relief that he was awake and talking. You're doing great, Grandpa. He looked around the room slowly. His eyes moved from the IV pole to the monitors, to the window, to the door, taking inventory of where he was, what had happened. Then his eyes landed on mine. Where are they? I paused, just for a second, but he noticed. Hawaii, I said. He closed his eyes. Not in pain, not in surprise, just closed them, and nodded once. A single small movement of his head against the pillow. He didn't look surprised, didn't look hurt, didn't look betrayed. Just resigned, like he'd expected exactly this. "You stayed," he said quietly, eyes still closed. "Of course I stayed." He opened his eyes again and looked directly at me. His blue eyes, the same color as mine, my mom used to say, before she died, were clear despite the pain medications. "You're the one who stays," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "You always were." I didn't know what he meant by that. Not fully, not yet. But I would. That afternoon his vitals stabilized even more. Dr. Cole came by on rounds at 3 p.m. and checked the chart. Blood pressure 118/72, heart rate 88, oxygen saturation 94% on just 2 liters of nasal cannula, temperature 98.6. All the numbers were trending in the right direction. "If these hold overnight," Dr. Cole said, making notes on his tablet, "we'll move you to the step-down unit tomorrow, get you out of ICU." My grandfather nodded. He was more alert now. The sedation medications were wearing off, and they'd switched him to lighter pain management. He could hold short conversations, though his voice was still rough. After Dr. Cole left, my grandfather and I sat in comfortable silence for a while. I'd pulled the visitor chair up close to his bed. The afternoon sun was coming through the window, creating a rectangle of warm light on the floor. "Do you remember," he said suddenly, "when I taught you to drive?" I smiled. "Of course, I was 16. "You were terrified," he said, his lips curved into a small smile. "White-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, checking the mirrors every 5 seconds. But you never panicked. Not once. Even when that truck cut us off on Powell Boulevard, you just braked smoothly and kept going, steady hands, steady heart." He paused to catch his breath. Talking was still tiring. "That's why I started calling you my steady girl," he continued. "You never lost your head, even when things got scary." His voice had taken on a quality I recognized. That nostalgic tone older people get when they're remembering the past, trying to hold on to it. "Your mom was like that too," he said, and his voice got quieter. "Catherine, my daughter, your mom. She never got flustered, never panicked. Even at the end, when the hospice nurse came in and said it was time to call the family, that she only had a few hours left. Your mom was calm. She asked me to open the window so she could hear the birds. She died listening to robins singing." My eyes burned. I hadn't talked about my mom's death in a long time. Breast cancer, 2019. I'd taken 3 months of family leave from work and moved into my grandfather's house to help care for her during hospice. Those last weeks were some of the hardest of my life. "Don't talk like that, Grandpa," I said, my voice tight. "You're going to be fine." "I know I am," he said, and his tone was certain, firm. "Because you're here." We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Then his grip on my hand tightened, not painful, but firm, deliberate. "Anna, I need you to listen to me very carefully." I leaned forward. "There's something you need to know," he said. His eyes were locked on mine, serious. "Not yet, it's not time yet, but soon. But when the time is right, someone will come, someone I trust, and you'll know who to trust too." "Grandpa, what are you talking about?" "I can't explain right now," he said. "But I need you to trust me. When this person comes, listen to them. They'll have everything you need to know." "Who's coming?" "You'll know when you see them," he said. His eyes were starting to close again, exhaustion pulling him back down. "Soon. Not yet. But soon." Before I could ask anything else, he was asleep. I sat there for a long time, holding his hand, wondering what he'd meant. Who was coming? And why did it sound like he'd been planning for this? The infection hit on day 4. November 19th, 3:07 in the morning. I was in that half-sleep state you fall into in hospital chairs. Not really asleep, but not fully awake either. aware of every sound. The monitor beeping, the ventilator in the next room, footsteps in the hallway, the elevator dinging, then a different sound. A sharper alarm, the cardiac monitor changing pitch. I jerked fully awake and stood up so fast the visitor chair scraped loudly against the floor. Through the glass window, I could see my grandfather's monitor. His heart rate had jumped to 108. His oxygen saturation was dropping. 91, 90, 89. Isabel Grant, the night shift nurse, was already rushing into the room. I followed right behind her. My grandfather's skin was flushed, not the healthy pink of good circulation, the red, mottled flush of fever. His forehead was covered in sweat. The sheets were damp. Temps 101.8, Isabel said, pulling the digital thermometer from his ear and checking the reading. She frowned. That's a big jump from the midnight check. He was 98.4 then. I moved to the other side of the bed, my professional training overriding the personal worry. My hands went automatically to check his radial pulse, rapid and thready, while my eyes scanned the monitors. Check the wound, I said. Isabel moved to carefully lift the gauze dressing covering the sternotomy incision, the long surgical cut down the center of his chest where they'd cracked his sternum open to access his heart. What I saw made my stomach drop. The incision was red, not the normal pink of healing tissue, angry red, erythema, inflammation, extending at least 2 centimeters out from the incision edges on both sides. The skin around the wound was warm to the touch, hot even, and there was drainage, not the clear or slightly pink serous fluid you'd expect. This was serosanguinous, blood-tinged, yes, but also thick and cloudy. And it had a faint smell. Not strong yet, but there. That slightly sweet, foul odor that every nurse learns to recognize. Infection. We need labs, I said, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. Lactate, CBC, blood cultures ×2 from different sites, and a wound culture, and call Dr. Cole. This is sepsis. Isabel looked at me. We both knew I wasn't on duty. I was just family. I had no authority here. Anna, she said gently, you're not... I know, I cut her off. I know I'm not on duty, but I'm still a nurse practitioner. I've worked in cardiac care for 7 years, and he's my grandfather. She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. I'll put the orders in and call Dr. Cole. By 4:30 in the morning, the lab results started coming back. I'd convinced Isabel to let me stay in the room while they worked. I stood in the corner, out of the way, while they drew blood cultures from 2 different sites, one from his IV line, one from a fresh stick in his other arm. While they used sterile swabs to collect samples from the wound drainage, while they pushed IV fluids to support his dropping blood pressure. The labs printed out at the nurse's station. Isabel brought them back and showed them to me. Lactate, 2.8 millimoles per liter. Normal is under 2.0. Lactate is a marker of how well your tissues are being perfused with oxygen. When it's elevated, it means your body is under stress. Organs aren't getting enough oxygen. It's one of the key indicators of sepsis. White blood cell count, 15,000 cells per microliter. Normal is 4,500 to 11,000. His immune system was in overdrive, trying to fight an infection. Dr. Cole arrived at 5:30 in the morning, looking tired but alert. He'd obviously gotten woken up for this. He reviewed the labs on his tablet, examined my grandfather, looked at the wound. This is sepsis, he said, confirming what I already knew. Probably surgical site infection. We need to move him back to ICU and start broad-spectrum IV antibiotics immediately. Vancomycin and piperacillin tazobactam to cover both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria until we get culture sensitivities back. Relief washed over me. Someone was taking this seriously. Someone was acting. I'll put the orders in now, Dr. Cole said. Transfer within the hour. At 6:03 in the morning, 3:03 a.m. Hawaii time, I called my parents. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. My mother's cheerful recorded voice. Hi, you've reached Linda. Can't get to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back. Aloha. I hung up without leaving a message. Called again at 6:18. Voicemail again. This time I texted, Grandpa has sepsis, surgical site infection. Call me ASAP. The message showed as read at 6:45 a.m. I watched the three little dots appear. Someone was typing. Then they disappeared. No response came. At 7:15 I tried again. Called my father's cell phone. Voicemail. Finally, at 8:47 a.m., 5:47 a.m., Hawaii time, my phone rang. Tyler. I answered immediately. Anna, what the hell? His voice was irritated, groggy. It's 5 in the morning here, what? Grandpa has sepsis, I said, keeping my voice level. Professional. Surgical site infection. His lactate is elevated, he's febrile, they're moving him back to ICU, he needs aggressive treatment. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear ocean waves in the background. He must have stepped outside onto the hotel balcony to take the call. Sepsis from what? Tyler asked. The surgical incision. It's infected. He's on IV vancomycin and piptazo. They're monitoring him closely. Another pause, longer this time. When Tyler spoke again, his voice had changed. It wasn't the groggy irritation anymore. It was something else. Clinical, professional. The pharmaceutical sales rep voice he used with doctors. Okay, but Anna, what do you want us to do? Fly back for an infection? Sepsis at his age, I mean, it can be a natural endpoint. Have the doctors talked about comfort-focused care goals? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? I said. I'm just saying, Tyler continued. He's 78. He just had major cardiac surgery. Sepsis in elderly post-op patients. The outcomes aren't great, Anna. You work in healthcare. You know the statistics. Maybe it's time to think about quality of life over quantity. Have they discussed comfort care? He's 78, not 98, I said, my voice shaking now. And no one has talked about comfort care because he's getting treatment. He's fighting. He's still strong. Anna, don't be dramatic, Tyler said, and I could hear the condescension in his voice. You're too emotionally involved. That's why families aren't supposed to make medical decisions. You work in cardiac care. You know how these things go. Let the doctors make the clinical decisions about goals of care. If aggressive treatment isn't in his best interest, he needs treatment, Tyler. I cut him off. Not comfort care. Treatment. You're overreacting because you're in the middle of it, Tyler said. His voice was calm, reasonable, like he was explaining something simple to a child. We'll see you Tuesday when we get back. Let the medical team do their job. He hung up. I stood there in the hallway outside the ICU, holding my phone, hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 30 minutes later, the texts started coming. 9:15 a.m. My father. Anna, Tyler explained the situation to us. We've talked it over, and we agree with his assessment. Comfort-focused care may be the kindest approach at Dad's age. We know you love him, but please don't put him through unnecessary suffering. Trust Tyler's medical knowledge on this. He works with doctors every day and understands these situations. Love. Dad. 9:18 a.m. My mother. Sweetheart, Tyler says you're overreacting because you work in hospitals and see worst-case scenarios all the time. We understand you're worried, but please don't panic and push for treatments that will just prolong suffering. Let Dad rest in peace if that's what God intends. We love you so much. 9:22 a.m. Tyler again. Anna, just to be clear, at his age, with this kind of post-surgical infection, comfort matters more than heroics. I've seen sepsis cases in elderly patients. The quality of life after aggressive treatment isn't always worth it. Sometimes letting nature take its course is the most loving option. Don't let your emotions cloud your medical judgment. I read that last text 3 times. Let nature take its course. I looked through the ICU window. My grandfather was lying in the bed, now back in the intensive care unit. The vancomycin was dripping into his IV line. The cardiac monitor showed his heart rate, still elevated at 102, but not the 108 it had been earlier. The oxygen saturation was back up to 93% on 4 liters of nasal cannula. Fighting. He was fighting. And they were hoping he wouldn't make it. At 11 a.m., Dr. Cole found me in the hallway outside the ICU. Anna, can we talk for a minute? We went into one of the small family conference rooms. Beige walls, 4 chairs around a small table, a box of tissues on the windowsill. I received a call from your father this morning, Dr. Cole said. He looked uncomfortable. Around 9:30, he was asking about your grandfather's code status. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? I asked. He was asking whether we should change his code status to DNR, do not resuscitate. Dr. Cole pulled up something on his tablet. He said the family has an advance directive from 2018 that requests limited intervention if your grandfather develops serious complications. I've never seen any advance directive, I said. Your father said he's faxing it over to the hospital. He said your grandfather made it clear years ago that he wouldn't want heroic measures if things got complicated. Dr. Cole looked at me. Do you know anything about this? No, I said. I've never heard him talk about any advance directive. Your father said it's being sent to our medical records department as we speak. If it's legitimate and properly executed, it would supersede any verbal wishes. My mind was racing. This didn't make sense. My grandfather had never mentioned wanting to limit care, never talked about DNR orders or advance directives. But would he have told me? Would I have known? Doctor, I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to wait, please. Don't change anything until I can verify this document. He shifted in his chair uncomfortably. Anna, I understand you're concerned, but if there's a legal document expressing his wishes, a properly executed advance directive, I'm obligated to follow it. That's the law. Then let's make sure it's properly executed, I said. Let's make sure it's still valid. Let's make sure it actually reflects what he wants now, not what he might have said 7 years ago. Please, just wait. Dr. Cole looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll hold off on any code status changes until we receive and review the document. But Anna, I want you to understand, if this directive appears legitimate, if it's notarized and witnessed according to Oregon law, I will have to follow it. I won't have a choice. I understand, I said. The fax arrived at 11:47 a.m. I was standing at the nurse's station when the machine started beeping and printing. Page after page feeding out. 3 pages total. I picked them up with shaking hands. Advance Directive for Healthcare Decisions. George Preston, DOB, April 9, 1947. Executed, March 15, 2018. The language was formal, legal, but clear. In the event that I am diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, or suffer complications from medical treatment that significantly compromise my quality of life, I hereby request that my healthcare providers focus on comfort-focused care rather than aggressive, life-prolonging interventions. I do not wish to be subjected to heroic measures that would only prolong the dying process. I request limited medical intervention in such circumstances, with the goal of maintaining my dignity and minimizing suffering. At the bottom of the 3rd page was a signature. George Preston. The handwriting was shaky. He would have been 71 when he signed this, but it looked legitimate. It looked like his signature. 2 witness signatures below it. Names I didn't recognize. A notary stamp. Official. From Multnomah County, Oregon. March 15, 2018. 7 years ago. I stood there holding those pages, and something felt wrong. Not the document itself. It looked real enough, but the timing, the context. This was 7 years ago, before Tyler's financial troubles, before whatever had happened in March of this year, before my grandfather had done whatever it was he'd done that made him tell me someone will come. But I didn't have proof. Just a feeling. and feelings don't override legal documents. That afternoon, I went to the second floor, the administrative wing. I found the office for patient relations, a small reception area with a desk and a few chairs, generic landscape paintings on the walls. The receptionist looked up when I walked in. "I need to request an official chart review for George Preston, room 4218, I said. "And your relationship to the patient?" "I'm his granddaughter. I'm also a nurse practitioner here at the hospital, but I'm requesting this in my capacity as family, not as staff." She nodded and picked up her desk phone. "Let me get Karen Walsh for you. She handles these requests." A few minutes later, a woman emerged from one of the back offices. Early 40s, blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Anna Preston?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Karen Walsh, patient relations specialist. Come on back to my office." We sat down in a small office lined with filing cabinets. She pulled up my grandfather's file on her computer. "What can I help you with?" she asked. I explained the situation as clearly as I could. The advance directive from 2018 that my family had faxed over. The pressure to change his code status to DNR. My concern that there might be something more recent that conflicted with it. "I've never heard my grandfather talk about limiting care," I said. "Never heard him mention that advance directive, and I'm wondering if there might be something more current in his records." Karen typed into her computer, pulling up different screens, scrolling through databases. "Okay," she said slowly, leaning forward to read something on the screen. "So I'm seeing the 2018 advance directive that was faxed to us yesterday. That's in the system now as of this morning." She clicked to another screen. "But when I search the legal documents folder, there's something interesting here. A notation from March 18th, 2025. My heart started pounding. What does it say? It says, "Patient called regarding healthcare proxy update. New POA documents signed and executed. Pending scan to medical records department." She looked up at me. "But I don't see the actual document uploaded to the system." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means someone, likely your grandfather himself, or possibly his attorney, contacted our medical records department about updating his healthcare proxy. They noted that new power of attorney documents were signed, but for some reason the physical documents were never scanned into our electronic system. So there might be a newer directive that supersedes the 2018 one?" "Possibly," Karen said. "The notation indicates intent to update, but without the physical documents, I can't confirm what they say or whether they actually override the older directive." She scrolled down further. "There's a phone number listed here. Let me see." She squinted at the screen. "Caldwell and Hayes Legal Group, 503-555-8821. A law firm. "Can you contact them?" I asked. "I can," Karen said. "And I should. This is exactly the kind of situation where we need to clarify legal authority before making any medical decisions." She started typing an email. "If there are two conflicting directives, one from 2018 and one potentially from 2025, we can't act on either one until we verify which is valid and enforceable." She paused and looked at me. "I'm going to send an urgent email to this law firm. I'll copy you and our hospital legal department. We need to sort this out before Dr. Cole or anyone else makes changes to code status." "Thank you," I said. Karen sent the email at 3:42 p.m. Subject: Urgent. Patient directive conflict. George Preston. "Dear Caldwell and Hayes Legal Group, we have a patient, George Preston, DOB, April 9, 1947. Currently hospitalized at Providence Heart and Vascular Institute with post-surgical complications. Our records indicate a healthcare proxy update was initiated on March 18, 2025, but we do not have updated documents on file. Family has submitted a 2018 advance directive. Due to this conflict, We are unable to proceed with requested code status changes until legal authority is clarified. Please respond urgently regarding current healthcare proxy status. Karen Walsh, Patient Relations Specialist, Providence Heart and Vascular Institute. She copied me, the hospital legal department, and the ethics committee chair. The auto-response came back within seconds. Thank you for your message. This office responds to urgent matters within 1 business day. Karen printed out a copy of the email thread and handed it to me. We should hear back by tomorrow, she said. In the meantime, I'm putting a hold on any code status changes until this is resolved. I went back to the ICU. My grandfather had been sleeping most of the day. The infection was taking a lot out of him, but the antibiotics were starting to work. His temperature had come down to 100.2. His lactate was trending down, 2.3 at the last check. I sat in the chair beside his bed and watched him breathe. In, out, in, out. The ventilator was gone now. He was breathing on his own, even if it was still a struggle. I whispered, even though I knew he probably couldn't hear me. Who's James Caldwell, Grandpa? And why didn't you tell me? His hand twitched in his sleep. The response came the next morning. November 21st, 9:15 a.m. I was in the hospital cafeteria, forcing myself to eat something, a dry bagel and bad coffee, when my phone dinged with an email notification. From Jennifer Hayes, Esquire Jays at caldwellhayes.com. To Karen Walsh Qualsh at providence.org. CC Anna Preston, Hospital Legal Ethics Committee. Subject, Urgent, Patient Directive Conflict, George Preston. Dear Ms. Walsh and Ms. Preston, thank you for your inquiry regarding Mr. George Preston's healthcare directives. Our firm does indeed represent Mr. Preston in estate planning and healthcare proxy matters. We have on file the updated healthcare power of attorney documents, which were executed on March 18, 2025. These documents supersede all prior directives, including the 2018 Advance Directive referenced in your email. Additionally, Mr. Preston left specific instructions with our office regarding materials to be delivered in the event of his hospitalization or incapacitation. Attorney James Caldwell will personally deliver notarized copies of all relevant documents to Providence Heart and Vascular Institute tomorrow, November 22nd, at approximately 2 p.m. He will also bring additional materials Mr. Preston specifically requested be given to Miss Anna Preston under these circumstances. Time is of the essence in these matters, and Mr. Caldwell will ensure all documentation is properly submitted to your legal department. Respectfully, Jennifer Hayes, Esquire. Caldwell and Hayes, Legal Group. I read the email 3 times. Updated Healthcare Power of Attorney. Executed March 18, 2025. Additional materials Mr. Preston specifically requested. What additional materials? I forwarded the email to myself and then headed back up to my grandfather's room. He'd been moved out of the ICU that morning. The infection was responding well enough to the antibiotics that they felt comfortable transferring him to the cardiac step-down unit. Same room number, just a different floor. 4218. When I walked in, he was awake, sitting up at about a 45-degree angle. The oxygen cannula was still in his nose, but he was breathing easier. The nurse had helped him eat some applesauce and jello for breakfast. He saw me and his eyes focused immediately. "Did someone contact you?" he asked. His voice was still hoarse, but stronger than yesterday. I sat down in the chair beside his bed. "An attorney, James Caldwell. He's coming tomorrow." My grandfather closed his eyes, let out a long, slow breath, then nodded. "Good," he said quietly. "It's time." "Grandpa, what's going on?" He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Tomorrow," he said. "When James gets here, you'll understand everything. I promise." "Can't you tell me now?" "I could," he said, "but I need you to hear it the right way. From James. With the documentation. So you know I wasn't confused. So you know this was my choice." He reached out and took my hand. Do you trust me? He asked. Of course I do. Then trust me one more day, he said. Tomorrow, everything will make sense. November 22nd, 2:15 p.m., exactly. I was sitting in the chair beside my grandfather's bed. He'd been dozing on and off all morning. The infection was under control now. He'd been afebrile for 24 hours. They'd switched his antibiotics from IV to oral. The discharge planning team was already talking about moving him to a rehabilitation facility in a few days. There was a knock on the door. A man entered. About 60 years old. Gray hair, neatly combed, wire-rimmed glasses, gray suit with a burgundy tie. He was carrying a black leather briefcase with a combination lock on the front. He had the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime in courtrooms and law offices. Professional. Precise. But his eyes were kind. Anna Preston? He asked. I stood up. Yes? My name is James Caldwell. I'm your grandfather's attorney. He looked past me to the bed. George, it's good to see you awake. My grandfather's eyes opened. He smiled weakly. James, thank you for coming. Of course, James said. He set his briefcase down on the rolling bedside table and turned back to me. Karen Walsh from Patient Relations contacted my office 2 days ago regarding a conflict in your grandfather's advance directives. I believe we have quite a bit to discuss. He gestured to the briefcase. May I? My grandfather's voice was steady. Show her everything. James clicked the combination lock on the briefcase. I noticed the numbers as he spun the dial. 492. April 9th, 1947. My grandfather's birthday. The lock clicked open. James lifted the lid and carefully removed 3 items. He laid them on the bedside table in careful order. First, a thick document, official-looking, multiple pages bound together. I could see a notary seal on the front page. Second, a small USB drive, the kind you'd use to store computer files. It had a piece of white label tape on it with handwriting in blue ink for Anna, emergency only. Third, a sealed envelope, white, business size. On the front, in my grandfather's shaky handwriting, for Anna. James picked up the thick document first. This, he said, his voice formal and precise, is your grandfather's healthcare power of attorney, executed on March 18, 2025. It explicitly names you, Anna Marie Preston, as his primary healthcare agent. It revokes all prior advance directives, including the 2018 directive that your family submitted to the hospital. He handed it to me. I took it with shaking hands. The paper felt substantial, official. The title page read, Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare Decisions. Below that, I, George Preston, of sound mind and legal capacity, do hereby appoint Anna Marie Preston as my attorney-in-fact for healthcare decisions. I flipped through the pages. 8 pages total. Dense legal language, but clear. In the event that I am unable to make my own medical decisions due to incapacity, unconsciousness, or inability to communicate, I hereby grant my healthcare agent, Anna Marie Preston, full authority to make all healthcare decisions on my behalf, including but not limited to consent to or refusal of any medical treatment, determination of code status, including CPR and DNR orders, decisions regarding life-sustaining treatment, selection of healthcare providers and facilities, access to all medical records and information. Page 6 had my grandfather's signature. Shaky, his hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but unmistakably his. The signature was dated March 18, 2025. Below his signature were 2 witness signatures, Sarah Chen and Michael Torres, names I didn't recognize. At the bottom of the page was a notary seal. Jennifer Hayes, Notary Public, State of Oregon, Commission number 84521. Everything looked official, legal, binding. I looked up at my grandfather. March 18th, I said. You did this 8 months ago. I had to, he said. I knew what might be coming. I looked back at the other two items on the table. The USB drive. The envelope. "What are these?" I asked James. His expression shifted, became more careful. "The envelope contains a personal letter your grandfather wrote the same day we executed the POA," James said. "He asked me to give it to you if circumstances developed the way he feared they might." "And the USB?" James paused. "In August, your grandfather and I had a lengthy consultation. He wanted certain information preserved. He asked me to record our conversation so that you would have a complete record of his state of mind, his reasoning, and the facts as he understood them." James's voice was gentle. It's difficult content, Anna, but he felt it was essential that you hear it, in his own words." I picked up the envelope. My hands were trembling now. It wasn't sealed with adhesive, just tucked closed. I opened it and pulled out a single piece of paper. Lined notebook paper, the kind with 3 holes punched on the side. Blue ink. My grandfather's handwriting. The letter was short. "Anna, if you're reading this, it means they tried. You're the only one I trust. James has everything you need. I'm sorry you have to carry this, but I know you can. You're my steady girl. Grandpa George." My eyes burned. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. James was speaking again. "I submitted the POA to the hospital legal department at 1:30 this afternoon," he said. "I've already received confirmation that they've reviewed it and verified its validity." He pulled out his phone and showed me an email. Timestamp 4 p.m., November 22nd, 2025. From Hospital Legal Department. Subject: Healthcare Proxy Verification. George Preston. The healthcare power of attorney dated March 18, 2025, naming Anna Marie Preston as healthcare agent has been verified as valid and properly executed under Oregon law. Ms. Preston is hereby authorized to make all healthcare decisions for patient George Preston, effective immediately. The 2018 Advance Directive previously on file is superseded and no longer enforceable. All medical staff should direct healthcare decision inquiries to Ms. Preston as the legal healthcare proxy. As of 4 p.m. today, James said, you have full legal authority over your grandfather's medical care. Any requests your family made to change code status? Void. Any decisions they tried to make? Overridden. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thank God, I whispered. James started to pack up his briefcase, but he paused, looked at me seriously. Anna, there's more. Significantly more. The USB drive contains information about why your grandfather felt it necessary to take these legal steps. It's not just about healthcare decisions. He glanced at my grandfather. My grandfather gave a small nod. Your grandfather discovered certain irregularities approximately 8 months ago. Financial irregularities involving family members. He hired a private investigator to document what was happening. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? James chose his words carefully. The kind that made him realize certain family members were waiting for him to die, and were counting on it happening sooner rather than later. That night, I drove to the Quality Inn 2 blocks from the hospital, room 214 on the 2nd floor. $89 a night. The room smelled like industrial cleaning solution, and the carpet was worn, but it had a desk and Wi-Fi. It was 11:43 p.m. when I finally sat down at the desk, pulled out my laptop, and plugged in the USB drive. My computer recognized it immediately. One folder appeared. Inside, one file. George_Preston_August_2025.mp3. File size 42.7 megabytes. Duration 1832. I plugged in my headphones, pulled them over my ears, and clicked play. There was a moment of silence. Then my grandfather's voice filled my ears. Stronger than it was now. Clearer. This was recorded months ago, before the surgery, before the infection, when he was still himself. James, I need this on record. Not for a court. I don't want this ending up in litigation if we can avoid it. This is for Anna. So she knows I wasn't confused when I made these decisions. So she knows I'm clear-headed about this. So she understands why I did what I did. I heard the sound of a chair creaking, papers rustling, James clearing his throat. Go ahead, George. Take your time. Another pause. Then my grandfather's voice again. 8 months ago, March of 2025, I had chest pains, sharp pains, right here in the center of my chest. I thought I was having a heart attack. Anna was visiting that day. She drove me to the emergency room at Providence. I remembered that day. He'd been in his garden and suddenly grabbed his chest. I'd been terrified. Turned out it wasn't an MI, not a heart attack. It was angina, a warning sign. But they kept me overnight for observation and monitoring. Standard protocol. He paused. Linda and Richard came to visit me that night. I was in the ER bed. They'd given me some sedative to help me rest. Ativan, I think. I wasn't asleep. But I had my eyes closed. I was drifting. You know how it is with those medications? Another pause. Longer this time. I heard Linda talking to Richard. They thought I was asleep. They were standing right there at the foot of my bed. Linda said, and I'll never forget this, she said, if it is serious, at least it would be quick. Better than a long decline. My hand flew to my mouth. At least it would be quick. Like she was hoping it would be a heart attack, hoping I'd die fast. I didn't say anything at the time. Didn't let on that I'd heard, but I never forgot it. I could hear him take a breath. That same week, I started checking my financial accounts more carefully. Not just glancing at the monthly statements they send in the mail, really checking. I logged into my accounts myself on the computer. Papers rustling in the background. I found 3 wire transfers that I never authorized. The first one was from November of 2024. $22,000 from my Fidelity investment account to an E-Trade account. I didn't recognize the account number. I called Fidelity to ask about it. They said the transfer had been authorized with a financial power of attorney document on file. I never gave anyone power of attorney over my finances. My grandfather's voice was getting tighter, more stressed. I dug deeper, found 2 more transfers. January of 2025, $28,000. March of 2025, $18,000. All to the same E-Trade account. Total, $68,000. I felt sick. I did some more digging, ran a search for that E-Trade account number. It's Tyler's account. My grandson, Tyler Preston. A long pause. I confronted Richard about it, showed him the bank statements, the transfer records. He didn't deny that the transfers had happened, but he defended Tyler, said I must have approved them and forgotten, said I was getting older and confusion is normal at my age. He actually suggested I might want to see a neurologist about memory issues. There was bitterness in my grandfather's voice now. That's when I knew. That's when I realized my own son was choosing his son over the truth, choosing money over honesty, protecting Tyler instead of protecting me. I heard what sounded like my grandfather taking a sip of water. So I went to a different attorney, not our old family attorney, someone new, and I hired a private investigator. Cascade Investigations here in Portland. I asked them to look into Tyler's finances, to monitor communications if possible within legal bounds, to document what was happening. More paper sounds. What they found. James, it's worse than I thought. James's voice quiet. Tell me. Tyler's in serious financial trouble. Credit card debt, margin calls on his investment accounts. He's living way beyond his means. The fancy car, the expensive clothes, the lifestyle he projects, it's all smoke and mirrors. His income is commission-based and volatile. He's been having a bad year, not making his quotas. My grandfather's voice dropped lower. In July of this year, the investigator managed to record a conversation. Tyler and Linda having lunch at some restaurant in Beaverton. Tyler said, and I'm quoting directly from the transcript the investigator provided, Tyler said, "The old man is sitting on almost 400 grand between the house, his retirement accounts, and his savings. If he ends up needing long-term care, Medicaid will take it all. That money will just disappear. But if he passes relatively soon, before he needs years of expensive care, there was a pause. Linda finished the thought for him. She said, "We'd inherit it all, clean and simple." I felt like I might throw up. "James, I want to be clear about something," my grandfather said. "They're not evil people. They're desperate people. And desperate people do terrible things when they think no one is watching, when they think they can get away with it. I don't think Richard or Linda or Tyler would actively hurt me, but I think they'd be relieved if I died. I think they'd make decisions that would facilitate that outcome, if they had the opportunity." Silence for a moment. "That's why I came to you in March. That's why I made Anna my healthcare power of attorney. That's why I updated my will. I didn't tell anyone in the family. I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to see if they'd prove me wrong." His voice got quieter. "I'm scheduled for cardiac surgery in the fall. Triple bypass. My cardiologist recommended it after the angina episodes got worse. When I told the family about the surgery, I watched their reactions carefully. Richard seemed worried. Linda seemed worried. But Tyler's eyes lit up for just a second before he hit it. I saw it." Another pause. "I'm making this recording in August because I want Anna to understand. I want her to know that whatever happens, whether I make it through the surgery or not, whether I recover or not, I made these decisions with a clear mind. I chose Anna not because I don't love my son. I do love Richard. He's my son. But I chose Anna because she's the one I can trust. Because she's the one who's been there. Because she's steady." His voice warmed a little. "James, you should know about Anna. When Catherine died, my daughter, Anna's mother, 6 years ago, it was breast cancer. Stage 4. Anna took 3 months of family medical leave from her job. She moved into my house to help with the hospice care. She was there every single day, changing bed sheets, helping Catherine bathe, administering medications, sitting with her through the night when the pain was bad. She was there when Catherine took her last breath." A pause. "Tyler visited twice during those 3 months. Once at the beginning, once near the end. Richard and Linda came for the funeral and left the next morning." Another pause. "Anna calls me every Sunday, has for 6 years. She asks how I am. She listens when I talk about my vegetable garden, my medications, my boring retired person problems. She doesn't just call out of obligation. She calls because she cares." I could hear the emotion in his voice now. "I'm not making this recording to punish Richard or Linda or Tyler. I'm making it so Anna understands, so she doesn't blame herself for whatever happens, so she knows that I deliberately and consciously chose her to make these decisions because I trust her judgment and her heart." A long pause. "If something happens during the surgery, if there are complications, if I end up incapacitated, if they try to limit my care or push for comfort measures when I'm still fighting, make sure Anna knows she has the legal authority to override them. Make sure she knows that I wanted her to have that authority. Make sure she knows that I trust her to make the right decisions for the right reasons." Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Tell her, she's my steady girl, like her mother was. Tell her I love her, and tell her I'm sorry she has to carry this burden." There was silence for a moment, then an addition, like an afterthought. "One more thing, James. This is important. Last week after my surgery, I was in the ICU. I was sedated, conscious sedation, propofol, I think. I couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't speak, but I could hear. My whole body went cold. I heard Linda. I heard her standing at the foot of my bed, talking to Tyler and Richard. She said, 'He's not worth canceling the trip. Tyler earned this vacation.' I started crying. I heard every word. I heard Tyler agree. I heard them leave. And I knew I'd been right about everything." The recording ended. The silence in my hotel room was absolute. I looked at the laptop screen. The audio player showed the timestamp, 18:32, 18 minutes and 32 seconds. My phone showed the time, 1:17 a.m. There were 6 missed calls on my screen, all from my mother, all while I'd had my headphones on. One voicemail. Timestamp, 12:45 a.m. I clicked play. My mother's voice, cheerful and bright. Anna, sweetie? Just wanted to let you know we're flying home Tuesday morning. Should be back by early afternoon. How's Dad doing? Is he doing better? Call us back when you can. We love you. Aloha. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. I looked back at my laptop, at the audio file, and I clicked play again. I listened to the entire recording a second time. November 24th. My grandfather had been moved back to the step-down unit. The infection was under control. He was sitting up, eating solid food, breathing room air. When I walked in that morning, he looked at me and knew. Did James find you? He did. I heard the recording, twice. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Grandpa, you heard her. You heard Mom say you weren't worth the trip. He nodded slowly. I was sedated, but not unconscious. I heard everything. We sat in silence. The 68,000, I said. Is there more? I don't know anymore. That's why I'm giving you and James permission to check everything. He signed the consent form that afternoon. James arranged for a forensic accountant. When they come back Tuesday, my grandfather said, don't tell them yet. Let them think they're safe. I want to see their faces when they realize they're not. The forensic report came through on the morning of November 26th. Subject, urgent, unauthorized transaction identified. My hands shook, reading it. Wire transfer, $125,000. From George Preston, Fidelity-8923 to Tyler Preston. E-Trade-1-156. Date, November 16th, 2025, 11:47 p.m. Authorization, Forged Financial, POA, November 16th, 11:47 p.m. While my grandfather was unconscious in ICU, 20 minutes before their flight to Hawaii boarded, Tyler had done it from the airport. Total unauthorized transfers over 12 months, $193,000. They arrived at 11:30 that morning, tanned, relaxed, shopping bags from Hawaii. Anna, you look exhausted. Should have called if things were bad. I led them to the family conference room, slid the healthcare POA across the table. As of November 22nd, I am Grandpa's healthcare power of attorney. My father frowned. Since when? Since March. He didn't trust you. Tyler scoffed. That's ridiculous. I slid the forensic report across. $125,000, transferred from Grandpa's account to yours, November 16th, 11:47 p.m., while he was sedated and intubated. Tyler's face went white. The door opened. James Caldwell walked in. I've filed reports with Adult Protective Services and the district attorney. Elder financial exploitation is a felony in Oregon. I pulled out my phone, read the texts aloud. Tyler to Linda, November 19th. If sepsis takes him, at least it's natural. No one questions that at 78. Tyler to Linda, November 16th, 10:22 p.m. Transfer complete, $125K. He'll never know. Flight boards in 20. The silence was deafening. The door opened again. A nurse wheeled my grandfather into the room. He looked at them. They looked at him. Nobody spoke. 2 days later, Officer Brooks from Adult Protective Services took my grandfather's statement. Mr. Preston, do you understand why I'm here? I do. My grandson stole from me. My son enabled it. They abandoned me, hoping I'd die before anyone noticed. Brooks presented his findings: healthcare manipulation, financial exploitation, abandonment during a medical crisis. This is one of the clearest cases of elder abuse I've seen. We're referring to the DA for criminal prosecution. On December 20th, the district attorney filed 3 felony charges against Tyler: elder abuse, forgery, Wire fraud. Tyler's employer suspended him. His President's Club status was revoked. My father sent an email. "You're tearing this family apart." I showed it to my grandfather. He said, "Your mother would be proud of you. Don't let him twist that." I deleted it. My grandfather was discharged on December 10th. I'd set up the guest room in my house with a hospital bed and oxygen concentrator. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. Your family, the real kind." It's been 3 months now. Early February. We have a routine. Coffee in the morning. Crosswords in the afternoon. Physical therapy twice a week. Slow walks when his strength allows. This morning, the first snow started falling. My phone buzzed. Text from Tyler. "I'm sorry." I turned it face down. "You okay?" my grandfather asked. I looked out the window. Snow falling soft and quiet. "Yeah. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He smiled. The same smile from when he taught me to drive. From Sunday phone calls. From when he called me his steady girl. "Coffee's ready." We sat together in the quiet morning. Safe. They left him in a hospital room because they thought he was dying. They flew to Hawaii while infection burned through his blood. They forged documents and transferred money while he was unconscious. They did all that because they thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. The criminal trial is scheduled for spring. Tyler's career is over. My parents are cut off from my grandfather's life. I don't know how much longer we have. But every morning I hear him in the kitchen, every Sunday dinner together, every time he calls me his steady girl. Those are gifts. Gifts they tried to take. The person who stays isn't the loudest, isn't the richest, isn't the favorite. It's the one who shows up when it matters most. And that's the only family that counts. Before you go, if this story hit home, if you've been the one who stayed when others left, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if you believe family is about who shows up, not who shares your blood.
Wanna be my lover? Oh, yeah. No worries, I hope your game is working for you. How's my fuel situation? We got 3/4 of a tank. We got more than 3/4 of a tank. We're almost full. Ugh. I've got something stuck under my chair. That sucks. That happens.
Keep left.
I don't know. Do I or do I not? I don't know. Whatever. Let's just go. I think that looks beautiful. That scenery. Look at this.